without compromise, educating you without compromise.
Good day, JS3 students. My name is Mrs. Adebowale. I remain your basic science teacher. You are welcome to this second edition of the online teaching. Today, our topic is the cell. What we are going to learn about the cell, we are going to look at the definition of the cell, and we are going to look at the classification of organisms based on the number of cells. Again, we will look at the cell theory. So, starting from the definition of cell, the cell is the basic unit of life. It can also be defined as the structural and functional unit of a living organism. What it simply means is that the cell is the smallest or the simplest basic unit of living organism. Why it is defined as the smallest or the simplest basic unit of living organism is because it can carry out life processes. Life processes like respiration, excretion, reproduction, and so on and so forth. And here, the diagram on your screen is a typical example of animal cell. It has some parts that make up which is called the components of cell. Now, we look at the classification of organisms based on the number of cells. Number one class of organism is the unicellular organism or acellular organisms. These are organisms that have only one cell. The examples are amoeba, chlamydomonas, euglena, and paramecium. Here displayed on your screens are the structure of amoeba and chlamydomonas. The amoeba in different textbooks has different shapes of amoeba because it's regarded as a shapeless organism. So the shape that the microscope pick at that particular point is what is going to be displayed on the textbook. Then the second group is the multicellular organisms. They are organisms which consist of two or more cells. We have the example, the volvus, the hydra, the spirogyra, flowering plants, fish, bird, and man, and some other multicellular organisms. So you have the diagram of a flowering plant and fish as a multicellular organism. In other words, these organisms, the cells they have to join together to perform life activities. Then we now go to what is cell theory. That's our next subtopic. The cell is the functional and structural unit of life. That's the number one cell theory. Number two says all living things are made up of cells. Then 3, all cells comes from previously existing cells. Then 4, there is no life apart from the life of a cell. Number 5 is all living things are either a single cell or a group of cells. Now we'll move on to components of cells and their functions. Number one component of cell is nucleus. Nucleus controls all life activities in the cell. That's the life processes, respirations, all the activities of the cell. Then chromosomes, it contains the DNA which stores genetic traits. In our last lesson, we talked about the traits and the genes. So that's the stored DNA. The DNA is responsible for storing the transmittable characters in parents. Then number 3 is mitochondria. Mitochondria is regarded as the power cell as the powerhouse of the cell. The reason is that it is the site of respiration where energy is being generated for the cell to use for its processes. Then we have cell wall. Cell wall provide protection, shape, and mechanical support for the cell. Then lastly, we have vacuole, which contains the saps, which acts as osmoregulator by helping to remove excess water in the cell. It regulates the amount of fluid in the cell. I believe you have learned something this morning, but before we go, we have an assignment. Number one is what is a cell? What is cell? And number two is state 3 cell theory. You do the assignment and submit to the appropriate WhatsApp number. God bless you till we meet again.
Educating you without compromise.